Happy holidays from Germany. Ezra and I are here to meet with family, friends, and loved ones. A couple of weeks ago, when I talked with Bob, we didn't just talk about Ironman, we also talked about the Challenged Athletes Foundation that he co founded and how its relationship is with Ironman. And I figured it would be interesting for everyone to know that. So, with that, enjoy a little bit of the history there. And if you want to learn more or donate, then I'll leave the link down in the description. Happy holidays, and I'll see you next year. So, so when you look at Ironman, one of the big mottos is anything is possible, and I think
Hmm.
I think we've heard a lot about it already, and you hinted at that when you spoke about how equal the sport is
Hmm.
to everyone. And
Yep.
when you look at the broadcast, you see some amazing athlete. I mean, Scott Rigsby comes to mind, Sarah Reinertsen,
Mhm.
Rui Garcia Tolson comes to mind, and I know your Challenge Athletes Foundation that you founded with two other guys plays a giant role in that. And I know there was a documentary out that you can actually see on Apple, and there's a few other places
Mhm.
where you could see it. That's just amazing. So how did that come around in
Yes.
terms of seeing that need?
Well, and that actually, CEF came around because of the Ironman, because Jim McLaren was a 300-pound offensive lineman at Yale. In 1985, he was hit by a bus, thrown 90 feet in the air. I'm sorry. He was going to acting classes on his motorcycle in New York City when he was hit by a bus. Thrown 90 feet in the air, dead on arrival, lost his lower left leg, came back with a walking leg, not a high tech prosthetic, carbon fiber prosthetic like you see today, but a walking leg, one step up
Right.
from Captain Hook, and he ran a 3:16 marathon. Then he came to Kona, which is where I met him because I had a competitor, and he goes 10:42 at top 20% of in the race. It changed perceptions. Somebody can do it with a prosthetic leg. And at that point, he's traveling the world. He's sponsored by Budweiser. Well, 8 years later, he's racing in Orange County here in Southern California, and a van goes through a closed intersection, hits the back of his bike, propels him headfirst in a pole, and becomes a quad. He's already an amputee, becomes a quadriplegic. And it was one of those things that immediately Jeffrey Esikow, Rick Kozlowski, and I, who were all very involved in the sport of triathlon, knew we needed to do something for Jimmy. And I had actually been involved with the whole world of disabled sports before we started CAF. We'd been putting on a wheelchair criterium in downtown La Jolla called, the Kenny Souza wheelchair criterium. Kenny anteed up 10K for prize money for that event. And the one thing I'd learned from wheelchair athlete Jim Knab, who was an Olympic trials pole vaulter before he was paralyzed, he told me early on, he said, Bob, what happens is when you get injured, all of a sudden you're 30 years old and here come mom and dad back in your life. You've been an independent adult and now you're not. You need people to transport you. You need help. So our goal was when we were like, we got to do something for Jimmy. We're going to put out a little triathlon in La Jolla Cove and we're going to raise 25K and get Jimmy a van with hand controls to give him independence. That was it. That's what our goal was. So we raised 49 and we thought, done. And then three amputee women come up to us and say, listen, it's great you did for Jimmy, but did you know when you get injured, your health insurance covers a walking around leg or an everyday wheelchair? Nothing to do with sport is covered by your insurance because they consider sport a quote unquote luxury item. And you know, and I know, sport is a huge part of who we are and what we do. It's not a luxury item, it's a
Passion.
necessity. It's a
Right.
necessity. So that's when we became an official charity and decided if someone needed a piece of equipment or training or travel to stay in a game of life through sport, that forever and a day CF would be there. Now it's been 30 years to celebrate our 30th
Yeah.
anniversary. We've raised $159 million and we've sent out over 44,000 grants to challenged athletes in all 50 states, 73 countries, and more importantly, in 105 different sports. We just sent out our first grant for wheelchair pickleball earlier this year. So it's been awesome. And this last year we sent out 3,298 grants totaling $7 million. So it's been, and I tell people all the time, triathlon's a small sport with a huge heart. Our
Yeah.
base was triathlon. That's where we started from. And we still do our triathlon that we started for Jimmy. We just had our 30th anniversary of that. We just had our 17th anniversary of our $1 million challenge. 640-mile bike ride from San Francisco to San Diego, had 169 riders, and raised $3.7 million over 6 days. No, 7 days, 640-mile ride. So it's, and well, I think we had 28 challenge athletes on the ride. So it shows the mission. You see the mission live and in color when you're riding your bike and someone on a hand cycle is going by you.
One of my first halves was Lubbock, which was one of the few
It's a
qualifiers
qualifier for
for
Kona, yeah.
Kona. And
For our
you
challenge
get
athletes,
it
yeah.
used to be in that little lake area, and you would have
Yep.
to get out. And here I was, slightly overweight, getting out of the canyon, and there's a wheelchair athlete coming backwards, pulling himself up, and I'm thinking to myself, well, what are you whining about? I mean,
Exactly.
it must be so much harder to do this with your arms backwards, not knowing where you're going. Well, Bob, thank you so much for your time. I said to maybe 10 minutes. It's turned a little longer, but thank you
Oh,
so much for your time.
you can never do something like this in 10 minutes.